Hello, everybody, and welcome to this Meet the Nature Crime Alliance webinar. I'm Luke Foddy, Communications Manager for the Alliance, and it's great to see you all here today. Thank you for joining us. For those of you who aren't familiar with the Alliance, we are a multi-sector network of governments, law enforcement, civil society, and international organizations that aim to drive cross-sector collaboration in the fight against nature crime. These sessions give a platform for members of the Nature Crime Alliance to share insights and knowledge from their work. Now, we've got a really good lineup for you today. Shortly, we'll be hearing from Shawn Karns, a founding director of the Wildlife Investigators Training Alliance, or WITA, who will discuss WITA's really important work tackling wildlife crime in Africa. And then we'll be hearing from the government of Peru when we welcome Dr. Frank Robert Almanza Altamirano, who is the National Coordinating Senior Prosecutor at the Specialized Environmental Prosecutor's Office in Peru. And he will be discussing the country's national efforts to counter nature crime. Now, today's session is a little bit different to previous ones in that the first part with Shawn will be conducted in English, and the second with Dr. Almanza will be in Spanish. But interpretation is available via the globe icon at the bottom of your screen, so please select whichever channel you would prefer. And if you have any questions for our speakers today, you can ask them by popping them in the Q&A box, and I will do my best to get to those and put them to our guests. And as a final reminder, these webinars, like all of our Meet the Nature Crime Alliance webinars, are being recorded, and they will be posted on our website next week. So let's begin with today's program and turn our focus to Africa, where the Wildlife Investigators Training Alliance works in several countries to support their partners investigate, apprehend, and prosecute wildlife traffickers. And to learn more about their work, I'm delighted to welcome Shawn Karns, who is Director of Investigations and Trainings at WITA and a founding director of the organization. Shawn, thanks so much for joining us today. I know that you have just this morning, I think, concluded some work in the field, so we really appreciate you sparing the time to talk with us all, and I hope it went well, and welcome. It's great to have you here. For those of us on the call, the session with Shawn is going to be a Q&A approach rather than a presentation. So if you do have questions, drop them in the Q&A box, and we'll put them to him over the next 20 minutes. But I thought, just to get us going, Shawn, it would be great if you could start by outlining what WITA does for those of us who perhaps aren't aware of your work. Thanks.
Thank you, Luke, and thank you for the opportunity to be here today to chat with you guys and tell you a little bit about our work. Also, thank you to the Nature Crime Alliance for what you guys do in the vital work across the world, bringing together governments and civil societies. So I feel that is absolutely vital in the work that we all do and what we're looking to accomplish. So thanks for the opportunity. And yeah, we just checked into our hotel from being in the field for almost a month. And we just checked into a hotel about 20 minutes ago and ran to the room. So this is awesome. Thank you so much.
We appreciate the effort, Shawn. It's great to have you. I'm really looking forward to hearing about the good work that you guys are doing in Africa and beyond. So yeah, could you just give us a quick outline to start on what WITA is doing in Africa and
Absolutely. And yeah, thank you for that, Luke. So we are a US-based 501c3 charitable organization. We are comprised of lifelong or career-long, I should say, anti-wildlife trafficking experts and professionals. Our team is comprised of former U.S. federal agents, former criminal investigation states, wildlife biologists, as well as prosecutorial and legal staff that is made up of practitioners from across the world. So with that, we were founded in 2018. And during that time, we have been absolutely privileged to have trained more than 3,000 game rangers or wildlife officers, as they're called, criminal investigators that either work for the wildlife departments or police services, as well as prosecutors and magistrates. So we've been extremely blessed to work on 3 continents extensively. And after retiring from government service, my wife and I, actually founding it in 2018, but we moved to Zambia, the beautiful country in Africa of Zambia, almost a year ago. And we felt like through all of our work before that, it was the perfect location with amazing partners, but also an incredible place to base our work from. So we moved here about a year ago, and we've been fortunate to work across the continent, but not only with government officials, but also meeting some incredible civil society organizations as well that are doing vital work, because it's a team approach. And once again, our network has to be stronger than the bad guy network. So this is an incredible platform for that.
Great. Thank you, Shawn. So could you perhaps, just to provide a bit of context for our audience, could you just give us an overview of the scale of the challenge when it comes to wildlife trafficking? Let's focus on Africa for now. I mean,
yeah, absolutely.
Could you give us an impression? I mean, are we winning the fight? I mean, what does the landscape look like right now?
You know, and that's a really good question. And I think if we look at the term of a fight, nobody really wins the fight until somebody's knocked out or taps out. And to put that into the context of wildlife trafficking, which I'm including timber trafficking, natural resource crimes, in that in that train of thought. But as long, and I've thought about this, and I've been asked this numerous times, as long as rangers, investigators, prosecutors, magistrates, along with CSO partners, continue to deploy every day, we are in the fight. Will we ever stop it out? No. Human beings by nature, anyone to claim that we're going to totally stop it is arrogant and wrong. However, as long as these dedicated agencies and organizations continue to put the pressure on transnational criminal organizations, they will crumble. But the problem is we can't take our foot off the gas, so to speak. We have to keep pressing. We have to keep looking beyond low-level poachers that are, and many times I see them as victims. They're victims of the wildlife trafficking value chain as a result of financial incentives. The kingpins, the middlemen, they prey upon poverty. They prey upon the socioeconomic status of impoverished countries. So we have to look at it from that perspective. So are we winning? No. Are we losing? No. But we're putting up one hell of a fight. And it's commendable to see these folks day after day, boots on the ground, those who are doing the work, risking their lives, succeeding. We were fortunate while working with some very dedicated law enforcement personnel over the past several weeks, one of which culminated in a substantial trafficking arrest. If we continue to put the pressure on these organizations, they will make mistakes. If we continue to examine their vulnerabilities, and we have to look at it from the perspective of no longer just arresting the poacher. We have to look at the criminal drivers, what's happening. So across Africa, I must say, there are amazing government professionals as well as CSOs that are keeping that pressure on. And as long as that pressure is relentless, the bad guys can get creative and they can continue to do their things. But by God, we're going to continue to expose them, expose these networks, and make a difference. Because as human beings, that's all we can do. And as far as Africa goes, some of the most dedicated law enforcement professionals that I have ever worked with across the world, they're here. And nobody gets into the field of wildlife law enforcement to get rich. They do it because there's something right in here in their heart. They have a belief, and those that truly carry that forward inspire previous generations, or I'm sorry, inspire the next generations, and they've been inspired by the previous generations. So as long as we continue to focus our efforts on those that I like to say are the doers, they do it every day. They do it without glory. And by that, that's where we're making a difference. And yes, results are happening, but it takes resources, of course, and it takes partnerships, and it takes collaboration. So working with some of the NGOs that we have, many of them are also members of the Nature Crime Alliance. It's really amazing to see these groups come together to work with government and make a substantial difference on the African continent, because it's their wildlife, their resources. But where is the pressure coming from? The pressure for trafficking is coming from other continents. So we want to prepare
Shawn,
them. Yeah,
that's a really good point. And I think this leads to my next question, which is kind of WITA's approach to this issue, because I know that you guys have done a lot of work on value chain investigations and similar.
Absolutely.
So could you just tell us a little bit about that, like WITA's specific approach to this issue, and perhaps how it differs from aligned initiatives? Thanks.
Absolutely. So the value chain approach, what we call it, value chain investigations techniques, in order to dismantle the wildlife trafficking value chain, we have to empower and provide for the criminal justice value chain. For so long, these groups do amazing work, but the concentration has been on the rangers or on investigative units or on prosecution. What we seek to do through value chain investigations are train with these groups together. For instance, rangers, investigators will train together because when we train together, they begin to trust each other. The development of intelligence, the development of best practices, or utilization of best practices, I should say. And then those same investigators that I look at as a key element, it's imperative that they connect and train with the prosecutors. When we begin to speak the same investigative language, and we begin to look at these approaches and how we can dismantle the trafficking value chain by enhancing the criminal justice value chain and investing in everybody from the brand new ranger all the way up through the courts, it's imperative that they understand and realize that the criminal justice value chain is only as strong as its weakest link. And if we can work together, train together, and ultimately, when we go to look at the vulnerabilities in the wildlife trafficking value chain, they then are prepared to enter that and work up, work down, but either way, identify all elements of that. So it really is an investment in the team approach, and it's an investment in bringing people together. And this is something, I mean, other than travel, of course, that takes, financial backing, but when the power of people and the power of people is enhanced when they are brought together, but also when they feel appreciated and when they feel respected for what they do. So that, in a nutshell, for time's sake, is the value chain approach. Basically, it's bringing humans together, understanding each other's roles, and improving communication between those, and ultimately establishing trust. So that is the value chain approach that we believe in. Believed in it throughout my career. I just retired a little over a year ago as a criminal investigator in the United States. My focus was entirely on wildlife trafficking. And just by nature of working with various people and working with entities, we have to have that line of communication, that line of appreciation for what each other do.
Absolutely.
That makes us stronger.
Yeah. Thank you, Shawn. So could we then now perhaps take a bit of a more granular focus, and perhaps you can discuss some like country examples where you've kind of deployed these techniques, just to give people a flavor of what this looks like on the ground. That would be quite useful if you have any kind of practical examples of your work.
Yes, I mean, absolutely. We just completed a phase 1. We're in the country of Malawi. And Malawi has been a transit point, but it's also in particular areas of the country, there's abundant wildlife. Anywhere that there's any species that swims, flies, crawls, or walks across this earth, there's a price on it. So we spend the time with the rangers and investigators together. They begin to establish this dynamic, like the value chain side. But also, it's an investment in the communities. The rangers themselves work in absolutely brutal conditions, and they do it for very little glory. Once again, it's one of those things where they're doing it because they believe in the mission and they believe in the cause. So therefore, with that, you watch these two groups begin to train together. They begin to realize that rangers are the eyes and ears on the ground, but they also are the primary face of the government entity with the local communities. If we look at the poaching networks that feed into the trafficking value chain, it starts with the communities. And by also providing the rangers with community policing skills, as well as things like first aid CPR, these rangers can enhance the perception of their government entities with local communities by simply saving a baby that's choking, providing CPR for somebody in the local community, by rendering assistance to these communities. They are incentivized, or hopefully further trusting of the government entities. But the end result is when they begin to trust the government, they begin to come forth with information on the traffickers, the bad guys in their communities. So it starts at this very organic approach that value chain really starts with the communities. And it's imperative that the rangers do that. So they're doing it. Here in Malawi, they're doing it in Zambia, multiple other countries across the African continent we presented this to, and they're very receptive to it. We have to eliminate the silos. And once we get rid of those silos within the criminal justice side of things, that's when we truly will make a difference and impact the communities, but also gain their support. And when we have their support, they share with us information about the bad guys operating in those communities.
Great. This might be a good time to bring in one of the questions from our audience. I mean, I do have other questions for you, but this is quite pertinent to this question from Carol Mercier, who asks, what alternative livelihoods and/or government support can we provide to encourage people who participate in poaching to kind of find alternative opportunities, given that the poverty that they face and also the opportunities that they're offered by middlemen and things like that?
Without a doubt. Some of the substantial organizations, and I'll just name a couple, that are doing really good work with that. Of course, the International Fund for Animal Welfare, IFAW, as well as Wildlife Conservation Society, Liberian Chimpanzee Society, or Liberian Chimpanzee Rescue, I'm sorry, Jenny, in Liberia. These organizations, it's an investment in the communities. Alternatives to poaching. There are multiple things. There are programs that incentivize farming practices that perhaps deter elephant or wildlife in human conflict. Once these communities begin to understand this, and begin to gain an understanding that that wildlife is theirs. The intrinsic value of that wildlife is theirs. It's part of their country treasury. And once they begin to have the appreciation, they begin to invest in it. They begin to realize what happens when we have, in a national park, for instance, what happens when there's abundant wildlife. People invest money and they come and engage in game drives, tourism. That supports jobs for those local communities as well. So wildlife, once these communities begin to understand that it's worth more alive, and that is an initiative formed out of an incredible organization in Zambia, Wildlife Crime Prevention. It's worth more alive. The long-term potential for these communities to have tourists come provides jobs across the landscape, not just in law enforcement, tour operators, hotels. So to convince people to seek alternatives to trafficking, because once that elephant's dead, it's not coming back. However, if a bunch of tourists from Europe can come see that elephant, that's, a lot of money every single time people come through these protected areas. So these organizations are doing an incredible job of promoting that, reaching out to the communities through their either outreach or programs to incentivize communities to gain interest.
Thanks.
Has to work hand in hand with law enforcement. And as well as from the crime perspective, once people appreciate something for its long-term value, they're less incentivized on the short term, whether it be that trafficked pangolin or that, elephant, rhino, the iconic species that we all hear about. But even on lakes, wetlands, the value of turtles. Turtles do this amazing job in an ecosystem along with numerous fish species and things like that. If they're gone, the ecosystem is out of balance. So, and it's very difficult to bring that ecosystem back. So
yeah,
we have to instill in them, this is your wildlife, this is your timber, this is your resource. Once there's ownership, there's more respect for it.
Thanks, Shawn. And you mentioned there the importance of sort of many of these CSOs and other like local actors that are working together. I wonder if this is an opportunity just to quickly talk about the role of the Nature Crime Alliance and the engagement and collaboration that we're trying to drive. I mean, do you think there's enough CSO engagement happening on the continent at the moment? And do you think there's a role for something like the Alliance, or how does the Alliance kind of support the work that you're doing? Be good to get your insights on that, given there's members on the call who might be able to work with you and engage on some of this work.
Without a doubt. The one thing I really appreciate about the Alliance is the vetting process with membership. There are a lot of organizations who indicate that they're nonprofits. They're and frankly, I think a lot of the work that they're doing is undoing a lot of the good work. And when you have organizations like the Nature Crime Alliance that bring together legitimate organizations who their primary mission is people and wildlife and not glory, then you're getting the right people together. And that's one thing I'm really grateful for the Nature Crime Alliance, your staff that we've been privileged to work with, as well as compiling expert directories, resources. And these resources are of course available for law enforcement entities. They're protected. Also in working with Interpol and the Wildlife Crime Working Group, which is comprised of government and NGOs. You guys are incredible from that aspect, many aspects, but you're incredible the way that you bring these organizations together. And it takes something like the Nature Crime Alliance to provide a platform such as this, but also to introduce to the rest of the world, here's legitimate organizations. Here's people that are doing it every day and they're doing the right thing at the right time. And no ulterior motives. So
Thank
I'm really appreciative of that. And you can look at your list of organizations that are member organizations, or you can look at folks that are participants in the Interpol Wildlife Crime Working Group from the CSO side, and you can tell and see that it's legitimate. So
That's great.
Yeah.
Thank you, Shawn. Just in the interest of time, we'll move on. I mean, just to say, people on this call, if you're not working with WITA and you're a member of the Alliance, do get in touch, because that's what we're trying to do to drive this engagement. And thank you for mentioning the resources that we launched last month. Do check those out as well. And hat tip to my colleague Sveti Bandakova, who's led a lot of that work.
She's
I
been
want to quickly
incredible.
talk. Yeah, Sveti's a good egg. I want to quickly talk about the fact that your WITA, I understand, is starting to expand its work outside of Africa to other regions. We've got a few minutes left before I want to move on. So could you just quickly talk about what those regions are that you're looking at? And have you noticed any notable changes in the nature of the challenge or the dimensions? Have the learnings that you've gained in Africa, can they be applied elsewhere, or are the contexts just too different? I mean, some insights on the challenges of that would be really useful.
Yeah, no, great question, Luke. In all seriousness, so I think since 2020, maybe 21, but we've been contractors for the U.S. government, National Oceans and Atmospheric Administration. So we train their federal agents in specialized advanced investigative techniques. And so we take the same approach in the United States, but we've also been privileged recently to work in Ecuador, and applying the value chain concept to that. Crime is crime, bad guys are bad guys. Law enforcement is law enforcement, prosecutors the same. We're all human beings. So we revert back to, once again, that human approach. But people have to be trained, and they have to taste success if they're going to pursue success. So regardless if we're delivering a course in Spanish or in English, whatever the case may be, and whatever the continent may be, the approach is the same. Because, I mean, we're all people. And I'm very fortunate. My wife, our executive director, Steph Karns, she's a Spanish speaker and has spent time working in Central America. But
Great.
when we recently worked in Ecuador, it was incredible, because you saw the same passion in the people that are being trained. And that's what it boils down to. And it's kind of a mark of success, at least an indicator to us. How are people receptive to this? And then after the training or after mentoring investigative units or whatever, you begin to get the feedback of the results. And once people realize we can do this, the result, it has a snowball effect.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it doesn't matter where we're at. We're all the same from that approach. People want to feel appreciated. People want to be successful. And when you find the right dedicated individuals, the results, the approach works. They begin to utilize alternative investigative techniques that are ethical, legal, and they're proven over several years. Once people utilize some of these and they begin to see that they can take down networks, they have that confidence to keep going with it. And it's contagious, because
that's pretty success.
just from being a law enforcement officer for 30 years, being successful, doing it the right way, doing it ethically, and getting the bad guys, it's contagious, and it's contagious to those around you. You just get incentivized to keep going. So
Great.
That's what we try to do.
And it's great work that you're doing, Shawn, and we appreciate it. I've got one last question, which I'm afraid is going to have to be pretty much a yes or no because of the time. But someone has asked, do you have any interest in working in the wider Caribbean region at this time at all?
Absolutely. We'll go anywhere as long as there are organizations and people that seek to protect wildlife. So absolutely.
So I'd recommend, and that was from Arnie D. Puran to get in touch with you. When we publish this webinar online next week, we'll include contact details for all of our speakers. So perhaps there can be a connection made there.
Wonderful.
We did have another question we're not going to get to, but I want to just express the point because it's an important point. Simon Saif has said that in Bangladesh, a lot of tiger poachers, they actually are earning a lot of money as it is, and they say they wouldn't be so interested in alternative professions. And I guess that perhaps comes back to the supply chain and kind of reducing the demand to therefore lower the cost and make it less lucrative. But we can't get into that now. Look, Shawn, thank you so much. I mean, we're already huge fans of what WITA is doing, and please carry on the good work. And I wish you all the success, and hopefully the Alliance can contribute to that going forward. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
And enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Thank you so much, and take care, everyone.
Thanks, Shawn. Okay, we're now going to move our focus to Peru. But before we get into this session, I'm going to introduce my colleague, Ruth Nagurin, who is a senior associate in the forest program at World Resources Institute, which many of you will know is the host of the Nature Crime Alliance Secretariat. And Ruth will be moderating our next presentation with Dr. Almanza. Ruth works very closely with us here in the Nature Crime Alliance at WRI and has conducted research and managed projects in countries including Brazil, Mexico, Guatemala, and Peru. And in fact, Ruth has just returned from Peru, where she met with several government and civil society stakeholders working on forest and wildlife crime in the country. So Ruth, I'm going to hand over to you and over to Dr. Almanza. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias, Luke. Y como
Thank you, Luke.
esta parte de la sesión va a ser en español.
As this part of the session will be in Spanish.
So please, if you need to change your interpretation settings, so you can listen to the presentation in English. Entonces vamos a tener esta sesión en español. Si ustedes necesitan traducción,
we will have the
necesitan
session in
cambiar
Spanish now. If you need
la
to change
configuración para la
the
interpretación.
configuration for
Y es un honor
interpreting,
dar la bienvenida al
please do
doctor
so. It's an honor to
Frank
welcome
Almanza,
Dr.
que
Frank
es el
Almanza,
coordinador
who is the
nacional de las
national
fiscalías
coordinator of
especializadas
the
en
specialized
materias
prosecutor in matters,
ambientales
in environmental matters
Perú.
and
Y
in Peru.
le voy a dar
And
la palabra.
I will give him
Doctor
the
Almanza,
floor.
bienvenido.
Dr. Almanza,
No sé si
welcome.
pueden encender su cámara.
If you could
Perfecto.
turn your camera
Bueno,
on.
lo perdimos ahí. Muchas
Thank you.
buenos días.
Good morning.
Y no escuchamos su micrófono.
Buenos días, ¿me pueden escuchar? ¿Sí?
Ya,
Good
escuchamos,
morning.
perfecto. Entiendo que tiene una
I
presentación.
understand that you have a presentation.
Sí,
Yes,
básicamente yo voy a
basically,
conversar
I
con
will
ustedes
talk to
algunos
you
minutos breves,
for some minutes,
pero lo que me interesa más bien es el
but
diálogo, ¿no?
I'm
Que haya
mostly interested in
preguntas,
having a dialogue with
comentarios
you
y podamos intercambiar ideas
and
con
that
los
may we exchange
participantes,
ideas with the
que estoy
participants.
seguro que tienen mucha
I'm sure
experiencia
they
valiosa.
have
Yo agradezco
a lot
mucho
of
a
valuable
esta
experience.
invitación
I
que
think
me permite,
I
pues,
appreciate this invitation that allows me
participar de estos
to
debates tan
participate in
interesantes.
these interesting
Participar de
debates.
estos debates que creo que podrían ser productivos. Así que no sé si puedo empezar
So,
ya.
can I
¿Puedo
begin already?
compartir pantalla? ¿Sí? ¿Se ve?
Perfecto. Sí, perfecto.
Genial.
Gracias.
Entonces, una de las cosas con las que yo
So,
siempre quiero empezar
one of the things I always start by saying
es diciendo pues
is
que el Perú es un país
that Peru
que
is a
tiene
country that has
una
a
riqueza a nivel
richness
de bosques, a nivel
on
de
a
flora,
forest
fauna,
and flora and
bastante
fauna
importante.
that's quite
El
significant.
60% del territorio
60%
peruano
of the
aproximadamente es
Peruvian
amazónico,
territory
¿no?
is
Somos una
the
nación
Amazon,
que seguramente junto con Brasil y uno
along with
de
Brazil,
es uno de los
and
países que tiene
it's one of the
una
countries that has
importante
an
importante
important
diversidad, ¿de
diversity.
acuerdo? se alberga en el Perú miles de
It
especies de
hosts
flora y
thousands of
fauna.
species of
Es
flora and fauna.
refugio de especies en
It's a
peligro de
refuge
extinción.
for
Y bueno, las
species in
áreas que tenemos en
extinction,
el Perú
and the
son
areas we
áreas
have in Peru
bastante
are
importantes
quite
para
important for
mitigar la crisis climática.
mitigating
Áreas
climate
protegidas,
crisis.
reservas
Protected
naturales que
areas,
tenemos en el Perú
reserves that
son
we have
importantes de
are
proteger y preservar.
essential to
¿De
protect
acuerdo?
and preserve.
Lamentablemente,
Unfortunately,
está amenazada
it is
esta riqueza
threatened,
que nosotros tenemos,
this
esta
richness that we have,
biodiversidad,
this
estas
biodiversity,
extensiones de
these
bosques,
wildlife
por
extensions,
actividades como la tala
by
ilegal,
activities such
la
as
minería, el
illegal
tráfico de
cropping,
fauna,
the
el tráfico de
traffic of
flora silvestre,
wildlife,
y bueno, se está expandiendo
and
también sin control
the
alguna agricultura
uncontrollable
y
expansion
algunas
of
infraestructuras que
agriculture
no se
and
condicen con los objetivos que a veces se
infrastructure
tienen ahora.
that is invasive.
Entonces, este es el
So,
marco en el que
this
más o
is the
menos nos
framework
encontramos en el Perú.
that we're located in. And
Además,
aside
nosotros
from that,
podríamos
we could say,
identificar que en
we
el
could
Perú esa
identify
biodiversidad,
that
como pueden ver en esta
biodiversity
presentación, tiene que ver con 460
with
especies de mamíferos, 1.700 especies de
460
aves,
mammal species,
315 especies de anfibios,
1,700 bird
20.000
species,
especies de plantas,
15 lizard
endospermas,
species,
1.064
and
peces de agua
so forth,
dulce,
as you see on
375
screen.
especies de reptiles. Entonces, esta riqueza de biodiversidad en
And
el
this
Perú es lo que
richness of
se
biodiversity in
aspira a
Peru
proteger y
is
se
what
aspira
is
a
intended
preservar
to preserve
desde estas
from
fiscalías
this prosecutor,
ambientales
this environmental
que
prosecutor's office
nosotros estamos en este
that
momento
we're working on.
presentando respecto
We're
de lo que hacen,
presenting
¿no?
the work
Esos
of
factores
this office.
que amenazan
Those
esta biodiversidad
factors
del
that
Perú
threaten
es la
biodiversity in Peru
deforestación
are
y una
deforestation
deforestación
and
excesiva, una tala descontrolada.
uncontrolled tree
Hay
cutting.
un número importante
There is a
de
significant number
deforestación a
of
partir de
tree
tráfico de
cutting
madera, ¿no?
from the
Tala desconcentrada
traffic
con
of wood.
tala descontrolada con esos fines de tráfico de madera, pero también se
But
afectan
also,
los bosques
the
a
forests
partir
are
de
affected
actividades que tienen que ver, como por ejemplo,
due to activities such
a
as
partir de actividades que tienen que ver con minería.
mining.
Se ha establecido que hay zonas en el Perú,
It has been
Iquitos,
defined or
Madre de
established that
Dios,
there are areas in Peru like
la frontera con
Iquitos,
el Ecuador, que
Madre
son
de Dios,
zonas de
the
selva,
frontier with
pero
Ecuador,
son zonas de
that are
selva que
jungle
tienen
areas
mucho oro.
with a lot of
Entonces, esa
gold.
fiebre
So that
aurífera,
gold
esa fiebre por
fever
el oro hace que se afecte el medio ambiente
impacts the
con el
environment
propósito, con la desesperación de lograr esos
due
objetivos.
to the despair for achieving the objectives of the gold
Esto
seekers.
se ha venido incrementando
This
porque en el
has
Perú el valor del oro
increased
ha
in Peru
subido
because
mucho. En
the
el Perú el
value of
valor
gold
del
has
oro
risen a lot.
está
The value
aproximadamente
of gold is in approximately
$100 el gramo.
$100 the gram.
Entonces, si tenemos
So
el
if
oro
we have
aproximadamente $100
gold
el
with
gramo,
approximately $100 the
esa
gram,
actividad de
that
minería
activity of
aurífera se vuelve muy rentable.
gold mining
Entonces,
becomes
ya
very
es un problema
profitable.
la contaminación ambiental,
So
ya es un
environmental
problema la
contamination is a
deforestación
problem,
y es un
as well
problema
as
cuando hay minería
deforestation
legal.
when there's
Pero lo que se ha
legal
incrementado
mining. But what
considerablemente es la
has
minería
increased
informal, la
considerably
minería
is the
ilegal.
informal,
Esa es la
illegal
minería
mining.
que está
That's the
generándonos en el
mining
Perú grandes
that's
problemas y sobre todo por
causing
el gran
great
valor del
problems,
oro,
especially due
por
to the price of gold,
penas reducidas, los
the
vacíos legales en estas
legal gaps
actividades
in these
que generan
activities
que
that generate
muchas organizaciones criminales
that many criminal
hayan ingresado
organizations have
a esta actividad. Porque como sabemos, el
have
crimen
started to
organizado se
participate in
mueve
this
a
activity.
partir de un fin lucrativo.
We know that
Los criminales
organized
se
crime
reúnen y
is
se
moved
asocian
by profit.
cuando hay una
Criminals
actividad rentable,
unite
cuando hay algo que
and become
genera
partners
pues
where
ingresos
when there's a profitable
con
activity
poco costo,
and low
digamos,
cost.
además con posibilidades de castigo o de sanción
Aside
bajos. En los países de
aside
nuestra
from this,
región,
there's
normalmente la
low
minería
punishment for
ilegal,
these activities.
la contaminación, no
So
son delitos que son
the
castigados con
pollution
penas elevadas.
caused by this
Entonces,
is not really
eso
punished or
genera
with
un
high
escenario
fines, which
propicio
generates
para que
favorable
se puedan dar
scenarios
actividades de este tipo.
for activities of this
Entonces,
type.
este es un problema
So
fundamental que tenemos.
this is an essential
Una
problem.
contaminación, una deforestación
Contamination,
a partir de actividades como minería
deforestation
ilegal o a
from
partir de actividades
activities
como
such
minería
as
legal
illegal
o
mining
también informal y
or
una tala
informal
descontrolada.
mining and
También
uncontrolled
vemos
logging.
monocultivos,
We see also monocrops,
agricultura industrial
industrial
que no respeta
agriculture
pues áreas
that doesn't
protegidas y genera
respect protected
pérdida de flora y
areas
fauna silvestre,
and generates the
con la
loss of
consecuente contaminación y
wildlife,
destrucción de estos
flora,
hábitats
and fauna.
naturales que tienen estas especies, ¿no? También existe, esto el Perú digo es una zona privilegiada, también existe
There's
ríos,
also rivers
ríos navegables, ríos que tienen
that
peces y también
have
tenemos el
fish
mar que es bastante rico
and
en
the ocean that is quite
peces también. En
rich
el Perú hay
in
distintas
fish as
especies
well.
en el
In
mar.
Peru, there's different
Entonces, además
species.
de la caza
So
furtiva existe sobrepesca, pesca de
this also occurs regarding fishing.
prohibición porque no está
The
a la talla como para que se pueda realizar esa pesca, pero se realiza.
there's a
Entonces, hay
lot of illegal
industrias que a
fishing due
veces
to the lack of
son, entre
the
comillas,
legal
legales,
gaps.
pero que realizan
So it seems to be
contaminación, que
legal,
realizan
but they
sobrepesca, que
actually
extraen
cause a lot
recursos
of
naturales de
pollution
manera
and
invasiva
extract
y perjudicial.
resources in an invasive
Eso es algo
fashion.
que se tiene que seguir
And
combatiendo, se
that's
tiene que
something
seguir
that must
atacando.
be
Entonces, un poco
fought
la función
against.
de estas
So the
fiscalías
role of these
ambientales
this
es
environmental
luchar contra
prosecutor
toda esta
office is to
situación.
fight against this
¿De acuerdo?
situation.
Y no debo dejar de mencionar el tema
And
de
I
la
mustn't stop
sobrepoblación, el
mentioning
crecimiento
the topic of
desmesurado que a veces se da
overpopulation and
en
uncontrolled
algunas
growth in
poblaciones que
some of the
crecen,
populations that
estas urbes de manera
grow in these
irregular, afectando el hábitat
areas in an
natural.
irregular fashion, affecting the habitat, natural
Yo
habitat.
decía que esta minería
And I was
genera
saying that
ingresos
this
muy
mining
importantes
generates
y
very
genera
important
afectaciones
income
no solo al fisco,
and
sino también
affects not only
principalmente
the
al ambiente. Pero como es tan alto el
state, but
provecho o el
also the
beneficio de esta
environment.
actividad por el
But
valor del oro,
because it's such a
pues,
lucrative activity,
muchas personas se están dedicando a esto y
many
también
people
organizaciones
are
criminales,
dedicating
etcétera,
themselves to
legales,
this,
etcétera.
including criminals.
No quiero dejar de
I
mencionar, para
don't
mí
want
mención
to
aparte,
leave out
implica el tema
part
de los incendios forestales que en estas regiones también se han
that is
venido
the
dando,
forest
¿no?
fires that
Se han
have
dado
been conducted in these regions, that have
afectaciones
occurred
a
in these
partir de
regions
esto pero
from
felizmente se está
these
trabajando
activities, but
desde el
we are
Ministerio
happily
Público, con
controlling
CERFOR, etcétera, para
the
a
public
partir de
ministry
eso
along with other
realizar políticas
foundations
de
are
prevención de estos
working on
incendios
this
forestales
to develop
que,
prevention policies.
como podrán ver, y ha sido
As you may
materia de
see,
mucha
it has
discusión
been mattered, it has been
finales del año
broadly
pasado,
disseminated
se han
last
dado en
year,
varias regiones
and
estos ecosistemas se han
to
visto
raise
afectados.
awareness,
CERNAN, que es en el Perú
and
la
the
entidad que
affected
tiene que ver
ecosystems that are
parques, que tiene que ver la DIGESPAC, que
being
tiene que ver con
cared
brigadas
for by
campesinas,
an
el
institution here
Ministerio
in Peru,
de Ambiente, que han
and
visto
the
involucradas en
Environment
esta
Ministry have been involved
labor de prevención
in
de
preventing
tipo de desastres,
this type of
de este tipo de
natural
afectaciones al
disasters
ambiente, que
and
dejan, pues, como se
impacts.
puede ver en las
And as
gráficas,
you can see in the
profundas
charts,
cicatrices,
there are deep
ecosistemas
wounds,
afectados, ¿no?
affected ecosystems,
Matorrales andinos,
Andean bush,
pajonales afectados, comunidades
and
campesinas afectadas,
farming
incluso patrimonio
communities,
arqueológico
even
afectado.
archaeological
Entonces, estos
heritage.
fenómenos son
This
ya de los
phenomena
últimos años que se han
is
venido
of the
dando.
last years.
Son fenómenos que se han venido dando desde
It's
más o menos el
relatively recent
2021
from
en adelante.
2021
¿Sí?
onwards.
Solamente
And
quiero mostrarles para
I
que
just
se
wanted to
hagan
show
una
you
idea
so that you can have an
del
idea of
patrimonio forestal que
the
tenemos en el Perú.
forest heritage we have in
Tenemos,
Peru. We have,
miren, la cantidad de
look
bosques que tenemos.
at the amount
Entre
of
bosques
forest we
secos,
have
entre bosques
between
amazónicos
dry
tropicales,
forests,
entre
between
bosques
tropical Amazon
andinos,
or rainforest
¿sí?
and Andean
Estamos hablando de 72
forest.
millones de
We're speaking
hectáreas,
about 72
¿de acuerdo?
million
Pero
hectares,
son cientos de miles de
and
hectáreas
they are
que cada
100,000.
año se afectan a partir de las actividades que
There are
hemos
millions of
mencionado.
hectares
Y
affected
obviamente
each
cuando se
year from
afectan
these
esas
activities.
áreas, no se afecta únicamente
And when these
el
areas are affected,
bosque, sino todas las
it
especies
impacts
que
not
allí
only the
habitan, ¿no?
forests,
Estos
but all
recursos
the
forestales
species that
implican también
inhabit these
afectación a la
forests.
fauna silvestre que se mantiene en esa fuente. Entonces, las
So,
políticas tienen que ser mayores, las
policies
políticas
have
se
to
tienen que
be
dar de una manera concertada y
greater
seguramente a
and in a
ustedes les va a
concerted
interesar
fashion, and
qué
you
se está
surely will
haciendo
be
de
interested
parte de
in
la Fiscalía
what is
para
being
más o
done on
menos
behalf
ver
of
esta
the
situación.
prosecutor's office to
¿Qué se
look
está
at the
haciendo de parte del
situation.
Ministerio Público
What
en
is
este
being
tema?
done on behalf of the
¿Cierto?
public ministry?
De parte del Ministerio Público lo que se hace, pues, primero es combatir los
First,
delitos
the
ambientales.
public ministry fights against
Combatir los delitos
environment
ambientales usando la
crimes
legislación que tenemos.
using the current
Lo que
legislation.
hemos venido también proponiendo es modificaciones
What we have been
legislativas a fin de que se eliminen
proposing
brechas de
is
impunidad,
for there to
porque
be
hay
legislation
algunas
to
normas que deberían
eliminate
ser mejoradas y complementadas
legal
para que
gaps
no haya lagunas legislativas de las que se valgan estos
that these criminals can use
agresores del medio
or these
ambiente
aggressors
para que
can
su
use
conducta quede
to
impune. Entonces, sobre eso también se está trabajando en mejoras
be free from
legislativas, en
punishment.
persecución de estos delitos. Se
So the
trabaja en
persecution of
acciones de
these crimes
interdicción. Esto es
are being worked on,
destruyendo la maquinaria con la que realizan minería
and
ilegal, destruyendo
they
las dragas,
they are
palas,
the machinery that
estos
these
lavaderos o esta maquinaria
companies
pesada
use
o estos
is
vehículos que
also
usan
being
para realizar esa
analyzed.
actividad. A eso nosotros nos referimos cuando hablamos de acciones de interdicción.
And that's what we refer to when we speak
Sin embargo,
about
pues, es
interdiction
complicado
actions.
porque en la medida en que
But
estas actividades generan
it's
mucho
complicated because
rendimiento económico,
insofar
muy
as these
fácil de
activities
reemplazar
generate
para ellos
so much
lo que se
profit,
puede afectar
it's
en
very hard
interdicciones.
to
Y
replace.
además, al ser una actividad económica
And
muy
because it
rentable
is a
y al haber
very
estado
profitable
involucrado el crimen organizado en
economic
todo esto, cuando el crimen
economic
organizado se
activity where
involucra,
crime is
sin duda,
involved,
se
then
adquiere
without a
poder
doubt,
político.
political power
Y
is
si se adquiere
is
poder
required
político,
is
las
acquired, and if
normas
political power is
adecuadas
acquired, the
brillan por su
adequate
ausencia.
regulations are
Y las
quite
normas
absent,
eficientes pues son dejadas de
and
lado,
efficient regulations are just
¿de
ignored.
acuerdo? Y eso es un fenómeno que en
And
este momento nos
that is a
preocupa mucho,
phenomenon
que varias
that is very
herramientas
concerning
que
for
nosotros
us.
teníamos que eran
We
indispensables
we
para la
had
persecución han
several
sido dejadas sin efecto.
tools
Por
that had
ejemplo,
been left
ya la minería
without
ilegal está fuera de los
enforcement. For
alcances del
example,
delito de crimen
illegal
organizado,
mining
porque
is
se ha
outside
incrementado
the
la valla
scope
para que un
of
delito sea considerado crimen organizado. La minería ilegal quedó fuera.
organized crime, so it's not considered
Nosotros hacíamos
organized crime
era
anymore.
hacer extinciones de dominio, lo que se conoce en otros países como decomiso sin
And
condena,
what is
también se ha modificado de manera tal de
and
hacer casi
several
inaplicable
activities
las
have
demandas
been
que
modified to
nosotros
not be
hemos
considered
hecho
illegal,
relacionadas con
and
regular algunos
but
aspectos.
the
Por
actions
ejemplo,
we've
en minería
done
ilegal
regarding regulating
se
some
tiene
aspects of the
que
illegal
ver cómo
mining
penalizar
that are
actividades
related
como
to punishing
el
activities
traslado, el
like
transporte, la
uh,
compra, la
the
venta, la
transportation, the
exportación del mineral,
purchase,
que
the
no están
sale, and
reguladas como delito
exportation
y deberían
of
estar,
ore that is not
porque
regulated
todo
as
el
a crime
circuito
and
tendría
should
que
be
estar
because
como
all the
delito, pues
circuit
no
must
están
be
delitos y son vueltas típicas. Entonces eso
regulated,
dificulta la persecución,
and they're not. So
porque
that
cuando se hacen
makes the
acciones de
persecution
interdicción es donde
harder
se
because
encuentra
when
en el mejor de los
interdiction
casos
actions
los
are
peones.
performed,
Pero las
in the
personas que
best of the
realmente
cases,
están
you just
atrás de
find
estas
the
actividades,
workers,
pues
but
no
the
son
ones that are
detectadas,
behind
¿no?
that activity
Entonces,
are
yo
not
diría,
detected. So I would say,
más o menos, concluyendo lo que más o menos
concluding
quiero decir,
with my
es que estamos
presentation,
ya dentro de
is
una
that
economía
we are
ilegal.
within an illegal economy.
Cierto.
Eso implica.
Sí, y es una,
That's true.
pues es una situación
And
complicada,
it's a
¿no?
complicated
En la que está-
situation.
en la que existe ahora y también, y
And
bueno, estamos
well,
enfocándonos en los
we are
crímenes
focusing on
contra la naturaleza, pero
crimes,
también hay
nature crimes, but
repercusiones
also there
para
is an
la
impact
seguridad pública,
for
¿no?
public safety.
Y pues
Well,
ante esta situación,
facing this
doctor Almanza,
situation, Dr. Almanza,
¿cuáles son las
what are
mejores
the
oportunidades
best
de acción?
opportunities of action?
Y
And
como en la participación de nuestro panelista anterior hablaba un poco sobre la colaboración de la
our
sociedad con la
former
sociedad civil,
panelist
¿no? ¿Cómo ve
spoke
usted
about
estos
collaboration of civil
roles, o
society. How do you see these
cómo
roles,
percibe que
or
pudiera
how do you perceive
haber
that there could be
colaboración
collaboration
y siendo
and
consciente del riesgo, ¿no? De
being
los
aware of the
riesgos?
risks?
El problema más grave
The,
acá
the most
es que las
serious problem here
comunidades
is that
campesinas,
communities, that
las
farming
comunidades
communities,
nativas,
native communities
que
that
son afectadas con esta
are
actividad,
affected by this
¿cierto?
activity,
Lamentablemente no son
unfortunately
conscientes que
are
son
not
afectadas.
aware that they're affected.
Y es más,
And
cooperan con
they
estas
cooperate
actividades
with these
porque en alguna
activities
medida
because
estos traficantes,
in, at
estas
some point
mafias
these
les generan algún
mafias
ingreso.
provide
Es
income to these
penoso ver
communities.
en algunas
It's
acciones
sad
de
to see
interdicción a los
in some
miembros de las
interdiction
comunidades
actions
nativas, por ejemplo,
members
algunas
of the
zonas de
native
Coyoacán y del
communities
Tambo,
in
la
certain
zona de
areas
Nieva, que es
like
la frontera con
Tambo
Ecuador
or
entre Perú,
Nieva, that is
ver
the
que ponen a los
frontier
niños
between
encima de las
Ecuador and
máquinas
Peru,
para que no se
to see
vuelen,
that
para
they
que no se
put
interdicten.
children on top of the
Y son
machines.
gente de la comunidad que hasta lleva a sus
And
hijos
they are
para ponerlos
people
en las
of the
máquinas porque
community that put their
lo
children
penoso
on the
es que si el Estado
machines.
no llega
And what's sad
con
is
lo
that
que
if
esas
the
comunidades
state doesn't
necesitan
get
y
there
más
with
bien las
what the
organizaciones
community
criminales
needs,
llegan
but
y
criminal
les dan
associations
alguna,
do, and they
entre
give them
comillas, ventaja
quote
económica
unquote
o algún
economic
apoyo, pues
advantages
ellos
or
van a
some
cooperar con esa
support,
actividad.
they will cooperate with those activities.
Sí, y eso es el tema ahí
That's right, and
es otra capa de
that's another
complejidad,
layer
¿no?
of
Porque
complexity because
hay
there
elementos de las
there
comunidades
are
nativas que
elements of the native
participan y
communities
se
that participate
benefician,
and benefit from
pero tal vez no
this,
son
but
todos, ¿no?
maybe not
Y
all
por
of
otra
them.
parte
And on the
se
other hand,
tiende como a criminalizar
they tend to penalize
todos los miembros
all the
de sus elementos.
members or
Entonces sí es
consider
un tema
them,
un poco
all of
complicado,
them
¿no?
as criminals, but
Tiene una tarea
it's
compleja,
complicated. And
doctor Almanza.
you have a
Tenemos una
complex task,
pregunta
Dr. Almanza.
de Marisol
I have a
Arteaga,
question from
Arteaga.
Marisol
Dice,
Arteaga.
considerando que la
She
tala
says,
ilegal
considering
en
that
Perú muchas veces
illegal
opera con redes
logging in Peru often
corruptas que
operates with
involucran a las
corrupt
autoridades,
networks that involve
¿qué
local
estrategias
authorities and
concretas está
public officers,
implementando el
what
Ministerio
concrete
Público
strategies
para
is the public
desarticular
ministry
esas estructuras de
implementing to
complejidad,
disarticulate these
complicidad?
complex structures,
Especialmente cuando,
especially
como usted lo
when the
decía, las
Peruvian
propias
laws
leyes
themselves, such as
peruanas
the
parecen favorecer
flexibilization
la
of
impunidad.
forest supervisions or lack
Pregunta
of
complicada.
strong
No,
punishment,
sí,
seem
claro,
to
sí, claro, pero antes
favor
quería complementar
impunity.
un poco lo de las comunidades nativas.
Well,
Que
first I
decía, ¿cómo es
wanted
que
to speak about
participan
native
estas comunidades, no?
communities and how they
Y usted
participate.
creo que lo ha graficado de una manera
I
muy
think you've
importante. Usted ha dicho que
shown
hay
this,
un grupo de la comunidad,
well,
una
there's a
parte de
group
la
in the
comunidad
community,
que
a
coopera.
part of the community that does
Pero el
cooperate,
problema es
but the
que
problem is
esa
that
otra parte que no
that
coopera
other part that doesn't
tampoco se
cooperate
opone, o sea, se
doesn't
mantiene al margen por
oppose
el
either.
miedo, porque
They
ya en el
stay at
Perú
the
han sido más
margins
o menos
because
26
because of fear. We have
miembros de estas
approximately
comunidades
26 members of these
ambientalistas que han querido oponerse y que han sido muertos,
environmentalist
los han
communities
matado.
that have been
Porque
that have opposed to this and have been
la
killed
criminalidad ingresa,
because criminals come in,
es una criminalidad organizada, es una
and it's an
criminalidad
organized crime
que, como esa
that
actividad es muy rentable,
because this is such a
entran con
profitable
sus,
activity, they
entre
come in
comillas,
with
normas que
their
tienen estos criminales.
norms,
Entonces no utilizan la
and
persuasión
they
como la
don't use
herramienta, sino la
persuasion as
violencia.
a tool, but
Claro.
O te
violence.
sumas o te mueres, ¿cierto?
Either you join or you
Entonces,
die.
la actividad es muy difícil.
So the
Lo que
activity
se
is quite
enfrenta a
hard,
nivel ambiental es muy
and what
difícil.
is faced on an
Porque
environmental level is very
primero
complex
tienes
because first you have
corrupción alta,
high corruption,
porque en la medida en que estas son actividades muy
because
rentables,
as as long as they are profitable activities, they move a lot of economic power. I have shown you some figures of thousands of millions of dollars that these activities generate. And obviously they can have political power. And norms will not be needed, the ones that are needed. So at the time of performing actions, they will, state organizations will be infiltrated by these criminal organizations, and that will block the operational success. So what do we need to do? What are we doing? First, we're working the environmental prosecutors in an articulated fashion with the organized crime prosecutors. In Peru, a system has been created to work in groups among the organized crime prosecutor and environmental crime prosecutors, because we've noticed that this is organized crime, and that the only form of fighting against it is with operational intelligence and tools to fight against organized crime. Phone interceptions, technological tools, and others, because if we are facing organized crime, then we have to fight against it with organized crime tools, and it stops being a environmentalist persecution against polluters. Now it has to be a fight against organized criminals. That's what we're facing.
Sí, recuerdo.
Yes, I
como dicen, ¿no? Contra grandes males, grandes remedios.
I remember
y me parece que es muy interesante
that saying, against great evils, great remedies. So
con estas otras
I think what you're saying is very important.
¿no? Respecto a la corrupción, doctor Almanza,
so regarding corruption,
que también usted lo tocó, ¿qué piensa usted que pudieran ser
what do you
soluciones?
think
Y una última pregunta, porque ya estamos sobre
what
el tiempo también.
possible solutions do you think there could be? You mentioned in your presentation the topic of these crimes not being only a problem of Peru. You mentioned Ecuador, for example, but what ideas do you have, or what is your perspective on how to combat these crimes that go beyond the frontiers? First, it's not possible to face this type of situations in an isolated fashion. Within Peru, the prosecutor's office interacts with other prosecutor offices and the state. And we also must interact in cooperation with internal and national networks among countries, because mining, pollution, and depredation is present in Peru, Brazil, Ecuador, and Colombia, and species are also exported to the Middle East, where they pay very highly for certain species, and there's a lot of traffic of certain species that have high economic value in international markets. So I do believe that the only form of facing this is with an articulated work and network of this type that are very valuable. Thank you, Doctor. Well, we have another question here about the advances, but unfortunately, we are out of time. So thank you very much, Dr. Almanza. A pleasure to have you here, and I will give the floor to Luke to round up.
Thank you. Thank you, Ruth. And thank you so much, Dr. Almanza, for your insights today. And sharing those challenges that we face in Peru. And thank you for all of your efforts to meet those challenges. We really appreciate your time today. Thanks, Ruth. And that does conclude today's webinar. If you are a member of the Nature Crime Alliance and you'd like to share insights from your work with our network on this platform, do get in touch with us. You can find out more at naturecrimealliance.org/webinars. Many thanks to our speakers, to Dr. Almanza, to Shawn, to Ruth, and to Emily Vale from WRI, who produced today's webinar. And thanks as well to our interpreters. And finally, thanks to all of you for joining us. I hope you found this session useful. Do keep in touch with us, and I hope to see you all again very soon. Goodbye. Thanks.